Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting. It's lovely to see so many people here, so the word has got round. My name's Jerry Bird, and I'm going to go around the table so everybody can introduce themselves.
Hello, my name's Paul Rogerson. I'm an inspector for Cambridgeshire Police. I am the partnerships manager for the south area of the county, which includes Cambridge City.
Good evening, I'm Linda Kilkelly. I'm the Safer Communities Manager for Cambridge City Council, and I manage the antisocial behaviour team.
Hi, I'm Sarah Steggles. I'm one of the antisocial behaviour officers within Linda's team.
Hello, I'm Stuart Austin. I'm a police constable in the community action team based at Histon, which is managed by Inspector Rogerson.
Hi, I'm Tim Cook. I'm a local resident living just off Fen Road.
Okay, thank you. Okay, everyone will see that we've got minutes from the last meeting. I'm chairing it tonight, but in future, if you want meetings to carry on, Tim has kindly said that he'll set them up. Is that correct, Tim? Lovely. So, has everybody sort of seen the minutes? They're just an outline of the issues that came up at our last meeting, like I say. Feel free, to put your hand up, because the more issues we get, the better. And we want to hear everyone's view. I just ask that everyone's courteous to everybody else, even if they're upset what something's been said. You can see we've got Mr. Taylor here tonight filming. I would ask you, Mr. Taylor, not to film any of the residents, please, because this is sensitive issues that are going to be said. So would you please keep your camera pointed at me or the officers? Yes?
Can I just say that I have been asked by at least one resident who wants to come and make a point here if I would come along and film it tonight. I think it's great value of filming tonight so that what's said can then be shown to the councillors who are not here for when they get to set the police priorities at the next local North Area Committee, and even to send it to the MP if he's not here, or the Police and Crime Commissioner if they're not here. So I think there's great value in recording what goes on and taking what's said tonight to the people who are in power, and they can make changes at places where they can really make a difference.
Okay, can I ask residents to put their hands up if they want to be filmed tonight? Okay. And residents that
filmed without it pointing at us.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Filmed just pointing forward.
Yeah.
Pointing forward, sorry, yeah. Forward only.
Yeah. Forward only.
Forward.
Right, okay.
I'm afraid of having the camera pointed at them. Will there be a comeback?
I'd like to ask though that the footage isn't fed to media and put on social media, and these issues are kept out of that sensational environment, because that's not helping anybody. Please.
So you've heard what the residents have said, Mr. Taylor, so please could you keep it pointed at us? Thank you very much.
Has Mr. Taylor agreed that he will not give the footage to the media or put it on his own blog or otherwise tweet it as a resident has just requested?
Yeah.
Well, of course, I can't make that kind of commitment. Social media is the way that what goes on tonight can be communicated with the thousands of people in this area who are not here tonight, and with our local elected representatives. There's absolutely no point in filming a meeting and keeping it to myself. I think that would be very selfish. I do want to share it with as many people as possible, but to do so in a very fair manner.
So could we have a vote on whether this meeting wishes to be filmed, as it's not a formal council meeting and there is no right to film?
So, do people want this meeting filmed? No. Those, no.
Yes or no?
Yeah, yes or no? So no. People who don't want it filmed, can you put your hands up, please?
We don't want to film.
Yeah. Okay, and those that do? Yeah, Jesus.
It's only pointing that way.
Can we make a compromise that he just films this at the front, and then you will only hear people's voices?
Yes.
Yeah. I might propose that if anybody wishes to appear on camera, they can step forward, and if they do not, they can remain behind. Might that be acceptable?
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Okay, lovely.
I would like to finish one content, putting them together and getting people very angry, and that's not helping. So I would like to say, please can we avoid that? That's absolutely not helping our community at all.
Are you happy with that, Mr Taylor?
What the Cambridge News do is well beyond my control, I'm afraid. They might have a representative here this evening who's able to speak for them.
Okay.
But you won't do it.
Yeah, I'm here.
You're not going to give them your film.
I will make my footage available to anyone who wants it by putting it on YouTube. Anyone can embed it. And I'd encourage the Cambridge News to do so, because there are thousands of people with an interest in this area who are not here tonight, and many councillors.
Well, if it's only the front 5 being filmed, and if the front 6, 7 have got a problem.
Okay, we'll go ahead then. Okay, so I'm going to open the meeting now, so residents can start asking questions. Like I say, we'll take blocks of 3, so then we can get some answers and carry on.
Is there anybody here from the travelling community?
I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah? Got a couple?
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
What evidence do we need to collect in order for prosecutions to take place? Because some of us have reached the point where we really want this to go further.
Another question? Another question?
Well, obviously there's a lot of concerns from these minutes. I would like the first question to be addressed to the police, to ask them actually what has happened about the really serious major incident on Fen Road a few weeks ago. Whatever you believe or you read in the papers, we as residents think, well, what's happened? What has happened? Have they got away with it? Have the conflicts been covered? So I'd really like the police to tell us now, if they could, what the progress is on that particular incident. And then, once that's been addressed, we can go on and do something, because that's the thing that has made me very frightened.
Okay, well, firstly, thank you for giving us the opportunity to come and comment. I'm really pleased that we're able to do it, and I'm pleased that we are able to come together in such a good number as well. So we should get a really good idea, myself and Stuart, this evening of exactly your concerns, and that is my primary objective, to be here tonight in understanding perhaps some information that might be missing. The first 2 questions go together quite nicely, and the answer to the first question is, as with any type of problem like this, whether we're dealing with antisocial behaviour or criminality, we have 2 different types of prosecution that we can mount. One requires evidence beyond a reasonable doubt in the criminal case, and when we're dealing with some of the antisocial behaviour law and legislation and orders, we need to prove something beyond the balance of probabilities, or to the balance of probabilities, which is a lower civil threshold. So in starting to answer the second question around where we are with the recent incident, that is an ongoing investigation, so as such it's not right for me to comment where we are with it. It is an open and active investigation, as in officers are working on it. There are currently things that they're pursuing. For me to share those things in detail may hamper that case. As with any investigation, it wouldn't be right of me to comment on anything that's live. That is a criminal prosecution, and therefore we need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that any said person, any said suspect was involved. And as in any case, it is the job of the police, myself and Stuart and our colleagues, to put before the court the evidence that we can gather. The point that I would make about that is that you here tonight are a fair representation of how important this is to you. The incident itself is evidence of how significant the incident is. There's no denying, no one has said otherwise. It's a significant incident in the community, and it's an incident that we will. There's always questions about, well, what do the police actually investigate? We know what can we. I think the terminology that's often used is what can we be bothered to investigate. And I've heard that word used already once. That's an unfair word in many cases, because we can only investigate where we have lines to investigate. We do have lines to investigate this current incident. We are investigating it. If at any point we reach the point where we have nothing further, no further leads to follow, we'll be honest with you and we'll say that the crime has been investigated to that point and it's been closed. It's not a question of whether we bother or not, it's a question of whether we can. There are things that you'll hear about in the media. I was on the news only the other night talking about shoplifting, which is a very different issue, where we will make a decision and say, actually, this is a business crime, there are insufficient lines for us to follow, and the outcome of this investigation isn't proportionate to the crime that occurred. This is not one of those cases. We will investigate this to every point that we can. I hope that sufficiently answers the first question and sufficiently answers the second.
I was wondering whether we should all have dashboard cameras or something like that. Would that be acceptable, where we capture footage of things that happen? We see it, but...
I'll break that down into two things. Is it useful for me to have CCTV footage of an offence or something happening? Absolutely it is. Having spent nearly 20 years in the police force, would I give a victim advice that CCTV is the answer to everything? No, it's not, because it creates a state where we become perhaps paranoid. Some people deal with it differently to others. Personally at home, I have some CCTV cameras because I do the job that I do. I've seen it utterly destroy other people to the point where they'll sit and look at their CCTV cameras all day, every day, and they're jumpy whenever they go off. That's an individual choice for everybody. Yes, it's helpful. Do we want to get to that kind of society? I think that's a question for you, not for me to dictate. My opinion is very personal. If you want to invest in a dash cam, if it makes you feel safer, by all means do.
I'm more interested in what we provide you, so you can go ahead and deal with these.
Sure. Yeah, and again, we then come to a case of us having to be very, very clear and honest with people. And sometimes we only get to, when someone reports an incident, we only actually get to speak to the person reporting. I can't come to a public meeting and share with you what's happened. But sometimes someone's expectations can be sort of very different from what we can actually do. So someone will bring to me a video footage and say, this is clearly dangerous driving, I want you to prosecute this person. I can look at it, I can look at what legislation says, I can look at what charging guidelines say, I can look at what all the guidance says and say, actually it doesn't really meet the threshold for careless or inconsiderate driving, so I'm afraid we're not going to take that any further. And I can, we have this conversation a lot. You fall out with people very quickly because they believe that I can't be bothered, when actually I'm saying I make a professional judgment of something and we can't do anything. We do have plenty of scenarios where we have prosecuted from dash cam footage or things like that, because it has been dangerous driving or even inconsiderate. The problem is that I can explain that really as best to my ability, very eloquently to an individual. How that then is reflected and how everybody understands that in the community often comes back as this: we can't be bothered, or we chose not to. So the colleagues that I work with, I trust. They will make assessments of things. We have a process for assessing each report as to whether it has a viability, whether we can investigate it or not. I trust them to give you each, if you are a victim, a sufficient response. And part of what this is about tonight is the engagement process, is by giving you more information, giving you more context so you can understand. I'm going to start this evening as I intend to go on with a degree of honesty. Being honest, I've stepped into the role that I'm in the last 3 or 4 months. I'm not happy with how engagement is with the police and Cambridge in general. We have an ECOP system. Anyone know what ECOP stands for? East Chesterton on Patrol. That's where it came from. It started here. It's a system that the entire constabulary use now. It's not being used well enough in Cambridge, and I'm going to be bold, as I will with this tonight. Some of the matters that are cherry-picked by some of our media outlets, they're cherry-picked, and I would use that word sensationalised. And it's become very difficult for my officers to comment openly on what's going on, because the next morning it appears as a headline, taken out of context. That's my opinion, not that of the constabulary, but I'm going to be bold with you this evening. I want you to understand how it is. I want to tell you more about what's going on. I want to do it sensibly, and I want to do it in a way that gives you context about what's happening around you, not in a way that is just whipped up into a fury, because we're dealing with very sensitive things. We're dealing with several different types of community that are trying to live together, people that are trying to work out how safe it is to go out into the street. I had an email the other day from a lady who was absolutely petrified about walking out of her front door because of what she's reading in the paper, because of what she's hearing around her, and I need to fill that gap. That's on me, and I will do that. We will fill that gap. We will get you more information. That's something that will take a little bit of time. ECOPS will be the first way. Social media will be another way to do it. We have many ways to talk to you, and that's that's me being honest with you this evening. We're not doing it well enough. I think if we'd have been doing that for the last 18 months, 2 years, you would have a lot more information about what's actually happening around you. Because I need the PCSOs that work on your streets to help you contextualise what's going around you. Because all of us can go onto the Home Office website, draw off a list of crimes, and just be really worried about what's happening around us. That's not good enough. I want the PCSOs, I want the police officers and the sergeants that work on the team to give you more information so you can understand that actually those 15 antisocial behaviour incidents that were reported last week, 14 of those are abandoned cars. Maybe 10 of them are litter, because they're all classified by the Home Office in the same way. All the assaults that you're reading about, I want you to understand a little bit more about the fact that a lot of them are domestic violence incidents that are happening in homes. So they're still concerning, and that's where actually my officer's time is spent in dealing with those. They're not street-based crimes. I don't want you to be scared about walking out of your own homes. I'm starting to waffle now, so I'm going to stop.
There's a crisis going on here. That's why what you're saying has a place, but it ain't now, sir. It's a different atmosphere, right? It's a different situation.
We don't trust you, is the problem. We don't trust you, or the city council, or the county council, or all the other representatives to do anything. The thing is, most of, when I address it, the travelling community, most of them are no different than the rest of us. Good neighbours. It's a group. It's a group. And you lot are frightened of them. You are frightened of them. I've watched you on the end of the ferry road, the crossing. You're afraid to cross because your risk assessment doesn't allow you to go in there. We just don't trust you. Well, I'm speaking for myself. I can't speak for everyone else. But I've been here 46 years. I don't trust you to do anything. I actually went out onto the Fen Road some time ago now, when they were having trotting races down the Fen Road and they closed the road off. And I said to one of the police officers, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. And he couldn't say a thing, he just turned away. We don't trust you, is my take. And Jerry, I've spoken to you about this before, I don't know if you remember. Exactly the same thing. They rolled a car in front of my son, and it was a blue, either a Renault or a Citroen. 2 or 3 young kids doing handbrake turns on the Fen Road, where the little car park is. They rolled the car came to a stop approximately 10 metres, and that's not an exaggeration, 10 metres away from my son and my grandson. When he said to them, you could have rolled that car over as we ought to, flattened you, was all he got. We don't trust you to do anything. We need something.
And can I also say, you have no liaison officer, and I've been told this by your officers, for the Fen State. It's a fact. So you're talking to me about communication. That's one obvious bit of communication. It's not even happening.
Okay, this lady here.
It's a disgrace.
Hang on, I've got a lady here first. Sorry.
Thank you for for being here and for your explanation. I appreciate that the police are very stretched, and there are circumstances on the national level that mean that police funding is not what I believe it should be. That said, my frustration is I've reported a lot of incidents over the 15 years I've lived in this area, and not once has there been an outcome that resulted in anything really to speak of at all. And including one by a repeat offender, person who's taken it into his head to attack and abuse me at every opportunity. What I'm curious about is how many of these street incidents in this area are reported, say per year or whatever unit you like, and how many of them go on to produce a successful prosecution?
I'll start with your question. The honest answer is this evening, I don't know. I can produce those statistics for you. And one of the things we're going to take some notes on tonight is what kind of information you might want on a monthly, quarterly basis about what's going on.
I'm hoping you might give us some information.
I
might give us some reassurance that reporting things actually is worth it.
Yeah, so
Because when we do report something, giving a statement is a significant commitment of time. It can either be, you know, it tends to mean taking time out of your day to go down to Parkside and give a statement or something. I experienced this in London where I had homophobic attacks. My house was under siege effectively. I wound up sometimes giving 3 statements a night. And it was just such an enormous commitment of time that I'm mindful if people are going to report things as a matter of course, that they're signing up to a lot of time spent handing over information to the police, and the police, of course, then committing to a lot of time listening to us.
Okay, I'll try and answer all of that. So we can definitely tell you about how much is being reported, and that might, as a group of people, help you understand perhaps my estimation is vastly underreported. The gentleman to your left, that's going to be because people don't trust us. Okay, so we've got to start somewhere with it, which is what part of tonight's about. Right. Part of that may not be your specific mindset, sir, but others will choose not to report because they don't believe we'll do anything, so they see it as a waste of their time. The criminal justice system is the way it is, and I do get where you are. I've been a victim of crime, had to give a statement several times. It is a commitment of time, and I can appreciate if this is happening day in, day out. It's a significant investment of your time. There's not a huge amount I can do to change that. We are going to we do consistently look at civil orders to deal with people, and the evidence that you provide in a criminal case, whenever you give a statement, you may remember one of the last questions is, would you consider this being used for civil purposes? So if we need to, we can come back to those statements and start bringing them together for those civil purposes. Okay, so that hopefully answers your question about the commitment of time. There's not a huge amount I can do about that. I wanted to link back to this issue of trust. Unfortunately, I didn't need to come here tonight to know that people don't trust us. Okay, I have come here because I want to hear it and I want to understand more about why and what I can do about it. Until I can get that moving, I think we don't really know the picture of what's going on, and I don't think we know the picture about a lot of things. There is an underlying tone generically across the UK about mistrusting the police, and we've got certain types sort of harder to reach people, and I know that reporting from the travelling community is also incredibly low. As a group of people who are most likely to suffer that racism, okay, it's far too low. We should be getting a lot more reports from that community. I know that community are reporting a lot of things. Just comparing it to the rest of our settled community, if you like. I don't hear about domestic violence. I don't hear about other things. So there's a lot of it's both communities that have a trust issue, okay, and I need to work on both of those.
So I'll take one here and then a couple of questions from this side.
Okay. Firstly, I've lived here for over 20 years, and we have been raising issues about antisocial behaviour and speeding on Fen Road for most of the time I've been here, to no avail. I think you misunderstand the lack of trust. It's not that we don't trust police, far from it. What we have a problem with, I think, is that there's no evidence that there is an outcome to all our activities. Some neighbours and I, for example, did a survey for several weeks, which came to nothing. I have personally phoned and I cannot for the life of me remember, 101 is it? Yeah. I've phoned personally to report things, and the police officer listening to me has refused to take them down. On one occasion, I said, I don't expect you to do anything, I just want you to record it so that there is a measure of the sort of things that are happening and the amount of the amount that's going on. He refused. I phoned back to complain, and I got to speak to a delightful lady who said, actually, he's been told not to do this, but I'm old enough and ugly enough and I'll record it for you. The traffic issue is long-term, very, very long-term. And I remember on one occasion that we were actually told until somebody is killed, nothing's going to happen. I hope that is no longer the case, but we have yet to see action being taken. In terms of antisocial behaviour, littering is one thing, and I appreciate that that's not the responsibility of the police. Chucking glass bottles is not littering, and when that has been reported, I've been told that's just littering and not our responsibility. It isn't, because glass on the road is an active danger. Recently, I would say in the last couple of years maybe, there's been more behaviour against individuals, against cyclists, against pedestrians, things being chucked at both of them. Again, if this is reported, I appreciate that it is not possible for that report per se to be taken up, because there's nobody to take it up with. There's nobody to follow up. But there should be a record of these things so that it becomes clear to you what the level of difficulty is. And then maybe it would be possible for you to take a more global approach rather than say this particular incident can't be, and nothing can be done about it because we don't know which individual it is. But if you see that there's a lot of things happening, windows being, air guns blowing out windows, or lots of egging of windows, none of which is incredibly serious, but it is an indication that there is a problem, and the more it happens, the clearer it is that there is a problem. And the problem has been that for the last 20 years, very little has been done in response to our ongoing complaints.
Okay. Anybody here?
I think it's probably best before, so there's a huge amount to answer in one question. So.
Thank you. I'm not going to answer this alone. I'm going to turn to my colleague in a minute. I'm just going to... I absolutely take responsibility for this issue here tonight. It's kind of silly not to mention the elephant in the room that I'm the new boy here as well, so I'm going to ask some of my colleagues who've been here slightly longer than a few months to talk about things as well. That's not me trying to acknowledge my responsibility. I'm going to pick you up on a couple of things there. You said that nothing's been done. In the last few weeks and before that, we have done numerous joint days of action with BTP around the level crossing. Stuart and his team have done patrols, specifically recorded patrols around the ASB, the antisocial driving, the issues to do with cyclists. The egg throwing stuff was triangulated. We did receive a lot of calls about that, which were recorded. That when we did make an arrest, we were able to triangulate when we brought that person a question about all of them. So I can understand, I completely empathise with you and understand why you're using that terminology, because over 20 years, that's a long time. I want to use that as an example to support what I'm about to say, as unpopular as it's going to be. Things are done about those things that you report. Now, I would like to dig in a bit deeper around the things that are not being recorded. We should be, and from what I can see from where I sit, we're quite well protected. National crime recording standards and incident recording standards mean that that should not happen. That should not go through the net. And we've been great, and I'm not going to talk about what HMRC thinks to a point. You know what? Doesn't matter. But they're telling us that our ethical recording standards are very good. Okay, which doesn't mean much to you if you've not been told that on the phone. So there are things happening. Do we have a song and dance about it enough? No, we don't. I've said that, and we need to talk more about what we are doing. We have put some stuff out the last couple of weeks about what we've been doing. How widely it gets out there, I don't know. Maybe on a slower news day it might reach there, but it might reach the papers. But we'll try and speak to my friend at the corner there. We'll try and give them as much as we can to put those positive stories out and use ECOPS more. I'm going to circle back to another comment. There is no risk assessment that says we can't go anywhere. From time to time, anywhere in Cambridge, we'll have information that says, you know what, we're not going to go there because we're going to go and deal with it in a specialist way, or for whatever reason in this way. So we may have ways in which we do stuff. There are no-go areas. Okay, there might be some that I don't know about. I very much doubt it. There are no-go areas. Do my officers make a decision about what they're going to walk into? Yes, they absolutely should do, because sometimes they're on their own, sometimes it's just two of them. Absolutely, they should have the right not to walk into something if they don't think they can handle it. And you know what, they may not actually turn around and tell you exactly what they're dealing with, and I'm afraid that's where the trust issue is where we're going to fall down on that. Okay, there is no-go area. I'm quite confident to walk onto that site. I've got no issues at all.
Steve's point was the no-go area.
Okay, sorry.
Mine was
okay.
You have no liaison.
Right, no, that's true. We don't. But then we don't. In other districts, we share that responsibility with the council. I think it's a good point. Actually, I think this last incident has proved that, in terms of liaison, we've had contact with members of the site who have spoken in the news, spoken to us and condemned what's happened. So we're not at a position where we need a mediator. Sometimes it's really helpful, but in other places where we do have contact liaison,
I think most people who've been around, and there are quite a few of us for decades, know that some used to have some good liaison with the Fen Estate generally. We used to all go down the rubber dub a bit more than we do these days, talk around the pints. And if things were getting out of control, we'd have a word, and sooner or later, and quite normally sooner, things would be calmed down. That's how it used to operate.
I got advised by a police officer who said they were not allowed to go down Water Street after dark, because it was a disciplinary offence if they went down there.
Okay, give me that person's name and I'll take it up with them. That's absolutely not true. Okay, you have my absolute word on that.
This was
it's
following
not
a
true.
road traffic collision where the van sped off down there.
Okay.
And he said, I can't follow it. It's a disciplinary offence.
Yeah, but that's different. That's not a no-go area. That's about pursuit policy. That's totally out of context. That's a pursuit policy.
But he said if you went down
that would be the same if you made off in your car under certain circumstances and didn't stop for the police officer. There's a pursuit policy which has a number of factors in. We can stop vehicles. We can pursue vehicles. That's been taken out of context. That's not a no-go area. That's a pursuit policy. It's totally different.
Could you clear up one technical detail, because it's germane to what you're talking about?
Yeah.
As I understand it, county police, or whatever they're called, Chesterton is it? I don't know, have responsibility for the Fen Estate, whereas city have responsibility for Chesterton.
Not anymore, no. So this is very new. It's only, what is it, 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Right.
But it doesn't.
It had occurred to me that in this year of what has been an escalation, which happens to have coincided with the news station and the traffic calming, that I had found out that there's no liaison with the estate, and that the county were dealing with the estate, whereas the places where all the crimes were happening were under city. So
well, again,
how does this all make a coordinated?
Let's be careful we don't take things out of context that needs to be, because if you pick up 999, so pick up the phone, 999, the officer just comes from whoever's closest. Okay, there was no difference. What we used to have was community people that were specifically aligned to districts that would deal with certain things. Okay, so if I'm dealing with a problem one side of a boundary, we absolutely talk to each other, we do the problem solving together, but one person has to physically go to speak to a council colleague and say, this is where we are. It's about responsibility. The team that Stuart now works for, it doesn't matter, they report to both. So we've made things significantly better by joining the teams, but again, in terms of who deals with things, we're all police officers. It doesn't matter if it's BTP, us, a Suffolk car driving past.
You feel you're making it better. We've yet to feel it.
Well, yeah, it's a couple of weeks. So I was just conscious I didn't answer the first questions. Okay, so the traffic issue. It's a shame we haven't got anyone from Highways here tonight. And like I said, I haven't been here for 20 years, but you're not alone in this. there are lots and lots of road traffic hotspots that haven't been made any better by policing, and they won't be. They won't be made any better by policing because it's a sticking plaster. It's also the least efficient way to deal with traffic calming, is to stick a £40,000 a year police officer as a traffic cone in the middle of a street or with a speed gun, because it only works when they're there. It doesn't work when they go. And I've worked all over this county. It doesn't work because people's human nature is that when there's not a police officer there or a restriction, they'll put their foot down. So it needs physical renewal. It needs redesigning. Well, that's. I'm not saying that's a good or bad idea because I'm not an expert on that kind of thing. Okay. So, but that's something we'll need to work out together. If we're going to have a working group, which I think is where we're going, we're going to have an ongoing dialogue. We need to get some people in the room that can actually affect that. And again, those people, having worked with county on many different issues, I was the beat bobby for I've been the beat bobby for other areas who've had similar problems. It needs to be designed out. It's like everything else. We design it out. It can't happen anymore. I'm not going to blame police cuts because I don't think it's the cause. Even when we had more cops sticking people out on the roads with a speed gun, it doesn't work long term. And so I'm agreeing with what you're saying. I'm not blaming police cuts. But I am saying we need to think about it from its root cause. Did you want to make any comment about the longer term?
I did have a look at the wide range of issues that were brought up at the last meeting, and we do appreciate that you're all here tonight because there are big issues in the area. That's obvious to us now. I think you may have suffered from the fact that we are on the borders between South Cambs and Cambridge City, 2 district councils, and I promise you tonight that I'll go away and start to work with South Cambs District Council on the issues so that we stop up that gap. I think there are a lot of issues here that I wasn't aware of, possibly because they were a South Cambs problem as we saw them, but it's quite obvious that we have to work with them, we have to work with the police, and we also have to work with the County Council on the highways issues and the traffic regulations issues. From our point of view at Cambridge City Council, we do need to have specifics. So if we can identify people that are causing problems, ASB problems in particular, if we can identify addresses or even roads or areas, then we can start to look at that in terms of taking actions around the antisocial behaviour. But we do have to be specific about those. We can't do it against unknowns or against an area as such. We will work very, very closely now with the police, and we will, I think, as the inspector said, we do need a task and finish group around the area, and we do need to bring all the stakeholders around the table. And we promise you tonight that we will go away and we'll form that group and we'll come back with some answers in the very short term.
Fantastic. Okay, I've got a gentleman there who's been waiting to ask a question. Anybody else this side? Okay, so I've got 2. Do you want to start first?
Yes. So I do thank, especially the gentleman from the police, for coming here to speak to us. It's good to see you in front of a crowd that's certainly challenging. Some years ago, I was a victim of an antisocial event where I was hit when I was cycling on my bike by somebody leaving out of a van. But I received a very good response from the police. I provided a license number, and the police officer spoke to the driver of the van and assured me that they were sufficiently scared they probably weren't going to do that again. So that was a very good response. I got the strong impression that because I was able to provide a registration number, that this made things much easier. So if you do observe antisocial behaviour, you commented on CCTV cameras. What other things are useful to help the police in criminal or civil action, or the council, and which things are not useful that we might think are useful? What should we do and what's not helping you?
You know what, I'm going to hand this to someone who would have recently investigated something.
Hello everyone. I will say the main thing I've actually been reviewing a lot of the incidents in the Fen Road, Water Lane, Green End Road. It's got road type areas. And one of the main issues I have is that there is no registration numbers, not description of drivers, there's no footage of the offences at all, and in reality, our hands are very tied in what we can do in that scenario. So, for instance, I think I've got a list of incidents that have been reported on a Facebook group. I've gone through those today. I've had a look at the incident reference numbers that we have, and I would say about 20% of them we've actually got some information that I can take some form of action on. Certainly, it's about keeping your eyes open. It's not always easy, is it? In reality, it's not easy when someone throws something at you, when something shocking happens. We're not all professional witnesses, and even sometimes police officers can't remember or don't get the index of a vehicle when something happens. But that is the main thing I would say. Keep your eyes open. Any information is important. Where you are, if you've got a dash cam, if you can get a photograph of the vehicle, and if you get a photograph of the driver of the vehicle, again, that's very important from my perspective. Did you go past any shops? Was it in a public place? Because there could be CCTV footage that could show the offence or something similar. Yeah, I'd say that's about it. Any information is good information, but no information is bad information.
Getting a photo of the driver is just about impossible in most cases because the incident happened and they're off.
Yeah.
So all you see is the tail of the car.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying it's easy.
And generally what happens then, the thing that's happened to me several times after that is I've been told, well, the owner was approached, but we couldn't identify who was driving it because several people use this car, blah, blah, blah.
Talk about section 59.
Yeah. And again, if we're talking about and that again is sort of a prosecution basis, we wouldn't be able to prosecute someone if we didn't know who the driver was. What we'll talk about is, and I've spoken to the inspector about it, we can use a piece of legislation, which is section 59 of the Police Reform Act, which basically allows us to seize a vehicle if it's been used in an antisocial manner, and there's been an offence, or there's reasonable grounds to believe there's been an offence of careless and considered driving, I think it's driving on the pavement and various other offences. But for that, we need to have reasonable grounds to believe. I am looking to take some action, and that's why I have been reviewing the instance to see if we do have index numbers, because what we can do is we can warn the drivers and say, look, if you're found to drive in that manner again, we'll seize your vehicle from you. And that's an effective way of dealing with things, in some manners, because what better deterrent is there than seeing your friend having the vehicle taken off them, and for a lot of these people that's their livelihood, especially with the transit vans, etc.
Okay, is there anybody else in this group that wants to speak? Okay, so I've got you and that lady and Jen.
Right.
Okay,
So
if I go here first and then come down, all right?
So a couple of things really. I mean, I recall, must be 10 years ago, when there were 100 people in the room saying almost exactly the same thing. I know section 59s have been used before. One of the things that interested me was when you said perfectly correctly, you can't put a police officer there the whole time. You are, reacting in a sense of sticking faster at certain points. And you were talking about the need for other partnerships. Now, I'm not criticising per se the very expensive scheme that was done along Fen Road. But when it had been put in, I asked two county officers most involved, who were Andy Preston and Mike Davey on Twitter, when it became obvious that instead of, driving through, it wasn't slowing things down and things got worse, why it had not, as had always been requested, been designed for the level of antisocial behaviour that has been, down that road for decades, basically, and which was always supposed to be designed, and it was what, £200,000. And the reply was that they could not engineer it to the extent that might be required. So essentially, they hadn't engineered it in any way to account for it. And it has, in some ways, made things worse. So when we talk about having confidence in the police, and this is not a thing, you also need to have confidence that the other people that you need to work with in the county who are not here, and the financing of any changes, and actually the understanding that this is not a situation where perhaps normal engineering things work, and that perhaps it needs something different to stop people mounting pavements. And I don't know how you're going to convince people that that is in place given county have already been asked and answered that question, you know, and do not seem prepared to change the road layout.
The lady at the back there, the lady at the back here, what, was it you? Yeah?
My question's, that was exactly my question actually.
Okay, that gentleman there?
Right, you've got no footage, yes? You've got no footage of this said incident with the van and the cars that were racing?
That's not what he said.
That's not what he said. It's on there. This is the CCTV camera from my car.
So that's respect,
I was
is not what he said.
I was a foot away from the incident. I videoed the whole bloody thing, everything. I turned my car round to video the driver getting out of the 4x4 and running down the river. It's all on camera. I reported it. I'm the first person to have dialed 999 on that incident. I reported it. I called for the ambulance. I called for the fire engine. I called for the police. I left all my details.
Sir, I'm going to interrupt you because you might not be helping with the investigation by disclosing this.
You've had your go, I'll have my go. So, I've run, and nobody's run me. So I did speak to Jerry about it. I then went and rang the police again, the county number, left my information again. It took me 5 goes to get through to somebody I've actually talked to. Left them all my information again, told them I've got CCTV footage on this camera. It's still in the chip, still in it. I've taken it out and replaced it with another one. So this is genuine. Nobody has rung me. I then rang the officer that was in the Cambridge paper. The name of the officer was in there. I left a message on his mobile answer phone. Has he rung me? No. I'll leave it with you. Oh dear.
Now you know why we don't trust him. You do.
Okay, well the first thing is that Stuart didn't say that we didn't have footage of that incident. He said that the incidents that he's been looking into around that been reported since haven't had footage. Okay. I don't know why the officer hasn't called you back. He might be on leave. I don't know. Okay. I know exactly what's happening with that investigation because I reviewed it the other day. If he's not called you, then that's fine. We'll sort it out. This kind of approach doesn't help, though, does it? Because what you've done is you've come to a public meeting, possibly. Okay.
I've had 3 goes. I had the first go that I left there.
I think
told them I had CCTV footage,
right.
And then I rang after I spoke to Jerry. I said nobody's rung me, you know. She said, well, send me an email. I sent Jerry an email, and then I rang the police again. It took me 5 goes to get through to somebody I've actually talked to. It kept cutting me off, which is not good for the police. When you ring the 101 number and you're trying to report an incident, not a 999 number, it took me 5 goes to get through. Eventually, I left all my information with a lady on the end of the phone. Everything. I told her I'd got footage and everything. I said I assume somebody would contact me.
Okay, it's a
nobody has contacted.
You need to use web chat, they're more responsive.
Yeah.
Which is
Can't do any more.
Which is madness.
I appreciate everything you're saying. This is an ongoing investigation. I didn't say it was finished. I didn't say it was complete, and we've gone through every line, but it has been looked at. Okay. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. We can take that from you tonight. That's no problem. Okay. We can give it to the officer in the case. I can't account for his movements. I don't know why he hasn't contacted you.
What else am I supposed to do?
Nothing. You've done everything reasonable. There's nothing else you can do.
And not being funny, I've had to come to a public meeting to get something done.
Well, you have in your timescales, sir, with all respect, to get it done in the timescales that you expect, you've had to come here.
Yeah, but
okay.
how long ago did this car accident happen on Fen Road?
That's, was it a couple of weeks ago? Yeah. But in terms of how long the investigation will take, I know that the current lines of investigation are going to take some time because of what they involve.
I mean, the driver jumped out the 4x4 electric.
Right. Can I just start with all respect, sir? You do seriously risk tampering with the not tampering, but hurting the investigation if you now start talking about what you've seen in a public forum, which is why I tried to stop you from the outset. I appreciate you think it's important and is important to bring to everyone's attention what you just said.
Well, you haven't done anything.
That's not true, is it, sir?
Well, you're sitting here and expect, but you don't seem to give us the impression you do anything. We seem to like we've been isolated, and all communities that are here are isolated by the police. They're not particularly interested.
Can I can we just ask what's the usual time frame for response? Because we could imagine that if you will bounce on it straight away and have an answer in 24 hours, but what is the usual time we have to wait to have a response in such incident?
A response to what? Sorry, a
So
phone
incident
call?
that typically where...
So if you call something to us, if you call 101 999 web chat online reporting, the officer, the way it's graded will depend on, depending on what you report, it depends how quickly we'll get back to you. If it's an ongoing investigation, there'll be one single person that's investigating who's leading. They're called the OIC, officer in charge. That person, I have read the investigation. I know that they have set about certain things in motion which just take time because of what they are. Okay. So in terms of how long an investigation takes, it's a piece of string. So and I'm going to answer the question. When there's one person involved, when there's one officer in the case, if that officer goes on leave for 2 weeks, say for example, and the things that he set in motion take 3 weeks, then we won't allocate anybody else to do anything because there's nothing else to be done. He's waiting on something to happen. Okay, and I have to be careful what I'm saying because I can't say too much. So if I go on holiday tomorrow, I only allocate work to other people to do, the same as we all do when we work, if it needs doing. If that officer's on leave, I don't know if he is, maybe, I don't know, maybe he's having to prioritise, I really don't know. But the answer is if there's one person, if you email me, it's only me that's going to come back to you. If I'm not here to email you back, then you won't hear from me until I get back. It's very, very hard to answer in this environment why they haven't got back to you.
There was a van with a registration and a company name on the side.
Yeah.
The guy was seen running off. That seems like it could be wound up fairly quickly.
No. But in some circumstances it would, but what I'm trying to get across to you, there's no benefit to me in it taking longer, and we're not doing it out of spite, we're not doing it because of resources, we're not doing it because we've missed anything. There are things that we are doing in the background to try and trace who that driver is.
Do you not have the resources though to at least contact people and say we are looking into it?
Well,
I asked because in February my car and Eva's car and another, at least 3 cars were written off on this area. I was told to fill in a form, which I did at the time. I have heard nothing, absolutely nothing. So I can't claim my insurance. I obviously have no culprit to get money from. But I've heard nothing, and I would have thought you would have some system, even if it's in the emails these days, saying, we've received your form, blah, 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 we're dealing with it. We might get back to you as soon as we can, or it might be 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, I don't know. How long do I have to wait? But, it's this, as you say, not knowing.
Well, again, it depends what you've reported and what it's about. If you report something and there's no line of investigation, it's filed and you won't hear anything, but you'd be told at the time, that's it, when nothing else is going to happen.
But it doesn't say, even on your form, don't expect an answer for sort of a week or 2 weeks or 3 months or, I don't know, it's just, it all disappears into this.
Yeah.
So lady in blue. Yeah.
Can I answer the other questions? Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Just respond. So I'm trying to make sure that I do answer everybody. I don't want to be seen as fobbing anybody.
But I understand this basically is on case by case, and some investigation take longer than others. Is that true?
Yes. So I'm going back through questions now. So the engineering issue, again, I can't speak for them because they're not here. But as I understand it, they've also got the highway handbook, haven't they? So unless the road's design specifically is in that handbook, it's not approved nationally, unless they can't use it. So the solutions they have available to them to design it out are only what they can work with, I think, was what we were agreeing on. I think.
Yep. Yeah. I think my point is basically around what we can do and what responses we can expect from you. I want to see first, thank you for coming, and I realise this must feel quite rubbish. Doing a difficult job. So I have reported several incidents which are probably quite minor in terms of other stuff people are seeing because there was no property damage and no one was hurt. They were all around dangerous driving. And I've provided what I believe to be complete and correct registration numbers. On some occasions I've gotten acknowledgement and nothing else, which seems to come from an automated system. On occasions when I was fortunate enough to be with someone and they provided witness, I've received a response saying, thank you, if you see this again, please dial 999. Which is, a step up, but I'm not sure how much help this will be. I can do that, but by the
think the important thing is that if you're doing that, it is recorded and it's in our system. You know, so I've reviewed the incident. It will be on there along with the vehicle registration details. So that would have been run through the Police National Computer, and I will be able to see all the details of who owns that vehicle, etc. So keep doing it. It's very useful, and certainly when it comes to someone like me looking at it and reviewing the incidents and looking to take some action on it, it's very, very helpful.
I understand you probably can't prosecute on my word alone, because, or my word and, you know, someone else's word saying we saw that car, it was doing stupid things in the middle of the road. But do you get warned? I know there's a process where if someone would speed beyond, as a civilian reports a speeding offence, they get a letter saying this isn't a prosecution, but if we catch you doing this multiple times, you know, we will follow it up.
I'll give you a complete truthful answer there. The chance I would be logged and that either observation messages would be passed over the radio to make officers aware that vehicle is in that area and we can stop it if we see it. And we'll obviously deal with any offences if we see them. But other than that, it will just be logged. And like I say, it'll be for someone like me to look at it, review the incidents, and certainly from my perspective, when we're looking at legislation like Section 59 of the Police Reform Act, like I said, it's very useful because if we've got an abundance of information about a vehicle, I would say that gives me sort of reasonable grounds to believe and I can take some action. Ultimately, it's power of police to seize vehicles that have been acting in a social manner. It's difficult for me to go
Can that
through.
be used on vehicles that have, on an incident I can refer to because it's not being investigated anymore? I provided a vehicle registration that was out of area, Yorkshire or whatever. And this is quite common here because it's quite a simple trick and a normal trick to have vehicles registered all over the place. And addresses, of course, are very hard to pin down in some of these cases. So I don't know. Anyway, and the other, my other quick point on all of this is I think there's some difference between incremental crime reporting and what has been going on recently, which is an escalation over, say, 12 months, to a kind of crisis. That's why you got this kind of pressure, the heat, the sheer pissed offness here, and frightened. A lot of people, actually, quite rightly, and angry, which are two sides of the same coin. And the next step is normal civilians getting in trouble with the police for bad reactions from their own nerves and anger. This happens. You should know it, of course, in your jobs. You know, sort of post-traumatic stress response. These things can start happening. And then, if you want to start opening up a bicycle bridge next to that level crossing, if you don't get your house in order soon, politicians and police can do that. You could be all sitting, instead of in a nice gym being pelted with pitchforks from the locals, at a public inquiry, or facing charge of the corporate manslaughter. Because you'll be doing this and letting it happen, knowingly, with repeated warnings.
That's quite a hard act to follow, given that you've got an applause. I'm pretty new to this game, and I'm staying up, sorry, just doing the other. I'm new to this game, I'm new to the area, but one of the things that's become really, really clear in the 2 years I've been here with 2 small children and a husband is that this issue extends way beyond the number of people who are present here today. And that the number of people who are, as a, you know, have been expressed by other people, who are so fed up, who feel like just, you know, reporting these incidents, giving registration numbers is so pointless. The review that you've done today, and I know what that's like, you've got the meeting coming up, you obviously review all the critical information as soon as you can in preparation for the meeting, but there is so much additional stuff, and to have all of the people, all of our neighbours, our whole community really start to believe that reporting out all of those things is going to make a difference. There needs to be seriously prolonged feedback, and I know that that's been sort of talked about. I know you've talked about, you know, getting together and getting a sort of working committee going, but it really does. I feel so sort of sorry that there are so many people here who have been really upset by incidents over the 2 years since we've been here, because they just feel that there isn't any point. And really, please, for the sake of all of us and the newest generation who are moving into the area, please keep reviewing this, please keep looking, because only with that kind of feedback coming back are all our neighbours going to start then logging again and coming back to the meetings and joining the working forces again. That's it.
I've really just known me. I'm Ian Manning. I'm the county councillor for Chesterton. You'll be aware that the spreadsheet referred to. I don't know if the resident, I know he's in the room. I'm not going to name him specifically because I don't know if he wants to be named, but he was involved in helping us set up the spreadsheet which came from the Chesterton Chat Facebook group. Now, the police, via the previous area sergeant, have been, every so often when I've sent in this spreadsheet, has updated it with sort of what is publicly shareable detail about what happened in each of the cases. I think it would be good if we can get a commitment from you tonight to update that regularly. It's a very simple way that we can all log all the incidents that happen, we can all see all the incidents that happen, and we can all find out what the police can share with us. There's a higher level of detail than the sort of thing that happens at area committees where all you get is just high level statistics. And I think that, from the police's point of view, that would potentially give some of us who've had these reports that go nowhere, because I know some of it's to do with the systems that are beyond your control, help us get some trust about what is actually happening on the ground and the practical things that do and don't happen. And I'd encourage everyone in this room to please use Facebook, join the Chesterton Chat on Facebook, a politically neutral group, and the spreadsheet link is on there. Please, it's a Google Doc, it's very easy to access, and if you have any troubles, my day job's IT, I'll happily help you out for free. So that was the first thing. I think we need to get a commitment so you can update that on some regular basis. And the absolute regularity will come from the working group that Tim's going to help chair. And I would encourage, we need some people in the community to get involved in that working group. It can't be just us councillors and the police and the anti-social behaviour. In terms of the county design stuff that you mentioned, I was a little bit surprised. It seemed slightly slug it all into the county. The only, when we're talking about the sort of maniacs who drive at 80 or 90 miles an hour, there is no effective form of speed bump you can legally put in a road that will deal with them. The only thing you can do is a width restriction. And of course, we all know why you can't do a width restriction, because there's a sewerage works at the far end of Fen Road, and if a sewerage works found you've got to get through a width restriction, guess what, it ain't going to slow a car down. There is some hope there, and I think this is something that the residents need to hear about, that the sewerage works may now be moved. And that could be the eventual solution to unlocking all of this. And the final thing is that I did consider, we have, via Hazel Smith, who's a South Cams councillor, we do have a number of I have a few contacts in the traffic community. Helen, she has a much more because it's mostly in her patch. I did consider inviting some of them here tonight, but I didn't know enough about what this meeting was going to be like, and I didn't want to turn it into a us versus the travellers meeting, because it's not. It's us versus the criminals, whether you're a traveller or not. Yes. So one of the practical suggestions, I'd like to invite anyone here, and I'll be the first one who does it, just so you know it really is safe, is to have, there are a number of traveller contacts who are as pissed off with this as all of us are. I suggest we try and set up some sort of budgeting scheme where a few of us meet on an individual or a group, maybe pairs, so people feel safe, and we start to build up the sort of community links that will mean the absolute twats, excuse my language, who are doing this sort of stuff feel isolated wherever they're from, because I live down Cheney Way and I know they don't all come around from the Fen Estate, because one speeds past my window and I've raced out several times to get their number. So I think there's some practical suggestions there that we can take forward, and that's the sort of stuff that if you've heard it now in a public meeting, you really have to act on it. So if you can get that commitment and say, please, a few people in this meeting come forward and speak to Tim, because he's politically neutral, and we'll get a few people involved in this, and maybe we can slowly sort of rebuild some of this trust that we're all talking about here.
I just wanted to talk about the 101 as well, because you're talking about lack of reporting. When we had the instances with the pellets being shot at the windows, the police's response was, oh, it's an isolated incident. Have you got any witnesses? The answer is no, we can't do anything about it. So neighbours just ignored it, and then when they were walking around the next day, they saw several buildings, several cars had the pellets through. Once we spoke to them, got the incidence numbers, we then contacted web chat, who said, contact IMU. IMU were brilliant.
What's IMU?
This is the thing, I was just like, who are they? Incident Management Unit?
They're an investigation management unit.
Who
that's another thing. Being shot at by pellets, having that going through the window, lots of old houses with the original sash windows, that single plane, if there was a child on the other side, who knows what would happen.
It's so upsetting.
It's
so horrible for us.
There were people who were in tears about it because their children were asleep in that bedroom, and then they got a pellet through. So, but who knows what's happened? That was December.
We had one day before yesterday.
Yes. So there was even on Water Street a lady with a 6-month-old baby washing up and had her pellet through her window. And you just said, oh, it's an isolated incident.
Yes, quite, and nobody records it.
We always record it. We never.
No, nobody records it.
Yeah,
We
but the
record
thing is that
it
if
isn't
you
recorded.
phone up 101 and say isolated incident, nothing we can do, why do we bother reporting it?
I'm sorry, I just want to be very careful about the messages we give to the whole group. I understand what you're saying about not getting an incident number in one occasion. The message that you've just broadcast is that it won't get recorded. It should get recorded. If you're reporting criminal damage, you should get a crime number. If you're reporting antisocial behaviour, you should get an incident number. If you don't, then complain. I will deal with it. But you can go to the professional standards thing, or go back on the web chat, tell them you want to complain. You should get an incident number. What the lady's talking about is if someone goes on a rampage, if I walk out of here tonight and cause a load of damage across the school or to cars, just depending on what the Home Office counting rules are, sometimes it's grouped together as one crime, sometimes if there's multiple victims, it'll be 10 crimes. We shouldn't take that or misunderstand that as not being recorded. If a crime has happened to you and it's personal, then you'll get a crime number. So I didn't want to leave the conversation on the last comment, which was, and we won't record it, because we will.
Yeah, and they were, we got these numbers, and that was great, and that was really good, because then we could collect those together. But I think that the problem is that people are a little bit hesitant to be reporting, because we are almost shrugged off when we do it. And the thing is that, the person who was the victim here said, I'm not going to report it, I've already had my windows put in, I've had egg against the car, I've had these incidences, and we get dismissed. But we are saying to everybody, look, try and report it, and this will all be helpful.
But some people might be too frightened to report it. Yeah. Okay, I've got a gentleman here.
So, a couple of questions. What are the best ways of reporting these incidents to you? That was my first question. And my second question is, you've got clearly in front of you a group of highly motivated, intelligent individuals. How can we as a group help you deal with this situation?
Okay, so the second part of your question first. I have some ideas about how we can tackle this. I'm going to discuss them with Linda when we leave. There are some other bits of legislation that we can look at which we've not used before, but that involves a discussion with the City Council and the councillors first, okay, before I talk about it publicly. I was under no doubt before I arrived here what the scale of the problem was. Like I said to you before, I want to come and hear it from you. I do get it. I do understand the passion that's in the room. It's fair to say that I did understand beforehand the severity of the problem, but this is really helpful. In terms of what you can do, is don't be beaten by what can be quite a complicated system. Okay, we have to abide by these rules that I'm mentioning, the different counting rules and stuff. If you don't get a crime number, if it doesn't feel right, then just email me, email the sergeant, Tracy Williams, the new sergeant, email Stuart, complain. If it doesn't feel right that you're not getting an answer, then you're probably right. It's a bit like calling your bank. Unfortunately, you are calling a call centre that's based in Huntingdon. Does that make them any less effective? No, it doesn't. But it does mean they probably won't have ever driven down the street that you're talking about. They probably don't know about the problem that you're talking about. I do provide them with extensive information about the different problems, so they have a way of finding it. but the sort of volume that they're dealing with, it's not, they can't always do that. Okay, so I mean, years, and we're talking a long, long time ago, the control room was in the basement of Parkside, and the people would have known absolutely what you're talking about. So I appreciate, it's a bit like when you get put on hold with your bank, and you've got to explain to the next person the thing you've just explained to the last person before that. You need to use the keywords. This is a recognised serious problem that we've been speaking. Use my name. That means I get copied into the incident. Just in as politely as you can, just reinforce with them that you've been told that it will be logged. The control room will use what we call thrives, threat, harm, investigation, vulnerability, to assess each call. So if they don't see there's a requirement to dispatch someone, then they won't. If it's that severe, so they will. So if you get a pellet shot through a window, 2 different houses, depending on the vulnerability of the person calling the threat, whether there's anyone behind it, whether they can see someone, they may be dealt with in 2 completely different ways depending on the information that's given. So push with the operators, really push it and explain. If you don't think you've got something, then complain or ask for it. I apologise, what was the first part of your question?
So the first question is, what is the best way to report? You know, what
the best way.
For reporting?
Well, that there's already been some frustration expressed about 101.
Okay.
Again, it's a phone number, it relies on someone picking it up. Peak times it gets busy. We may have a major incident going on the M11 with lots of people trapped in their cars, which makes it very, very hard to call in. Or there could be any number of reasons that we haven't got the people to pick up the phone. If you want that instant thing that's not serious, the online reporting is live now. It's been live for a while. It's really, really effective. And it's much quicker. It gets to us much quicker. If you want to speak to someone, then by all means use 101, but you will have to hold if we're busy.
What's the website?
It's CAMS Police. If you Google it, it's the first hit. Yeah, and it's the online reporting's right from the front, and you can.
Yeah. You can also report ASB to the City Council. And again, as I said before, if you could be as specific as possible when you're reporting it, giving us time, dates, places, and if you know anything about the perpetrators. I'll hand over to Sarah for the contact details.
What I would say is the sort of stuff that you've been describing. I think it's really important that you don't give up reporting it to the police, because it's very important that it's logged, but in that way. But some of you have said that you're either too frightened to report it to the police, or you can't get through. And in those circumstances, if you don't need the police to attend, then I would suggest that you email the ASB mailbox, which is asbsection@cambridge.gov.uk. And just so that we've got the information. We do work very closely with the police, and we can make sure we pass that information on and we're getting the full picture. So if you can't get through to anybody, then do use that mailbox and ping us the details.
Can I just ask, I don't fully understand what your role is in all of this and what sanctions you can place upon people. We're hounding the police here, but we've got council representatives who we also give council lots of money to help.
Yes. Well, we're the Safer Communities team at Cambridge City Council. That covers quite a multitude of things, but within that team there's an ASB team. So it's a team of investigators who will look at any antisocial behaviour issues right across the city, and particularly, say, in council housing or in areas where we have council housing. But we will look at it in any of the areas. We look at hotspot areas, and we always work with the police. We would take some of the civil actions that the inspector was talking about earlier on in the evening.
As an example would be, I don't understand what the...
As an example would be perhaps that we would look for an injunction, say for incidents where we had a tenant who was causing problems to some of their neighbours, maybe through noise or through any kind of antisocial behaviours that might go on, then we might look for an injunction. That's the sort of thing we can do. But we can also look at, say, where there are groups of younger people maybe being difficult in an area, where we would look at acceptable behaviour orders and that sort of thing.
Can I just say that the key thing here is that I think just very quickly, Joe, because it's difficult for residents to know where to go, whether something's a police matter or an ASB matter. And that's precisely why we came out with this spreadsheet and why we have this link. And then everything goes on there, and there's this Facebook group, and there's loads of people on that, not just myself, but Jerry and other councillors who are all very knowledgeable. And then all the information is in one place. It's not sort of scattered around. You haven't got to work out where to go. So that's why, you know, I really just think we need to get a commitment that we can get some more detailed reporting back to residents, rather than having to work for residents to work out, is this an ASB issue I've got to go, and it's not your fault because you're different agencies. Yeah, ASB should look over here, police should look over here. It's really important we make this as simple, given the feeling in this room, we make this as simple as possible to people, so that you're not burdened by the systems that are behind in front of you, and we're not burdened by them as well.
Thanks. I would just like to raise a bit of a concern about this public spreadsheet that Councillor Manning's been talking about, and I think it's a bit of a sign that we've lost proper due process in this area, because the spreadsheet is identifying people by their vehicle descriptions, and essentially accusing them of crimes, and that's something which I'd like to hear the police's view on, because I think ideally we should be reporting things to the police rather than making these reports in public. Another area where I think we've lost sort of the rule of law essentially in the area relates to the CCTV camera which council has decided to put up. And I'd like to hear if we've got an update on that. And it was certainly down for many months after vandalism. And I don't think that council policies should be changed by vandalism. I think the state should take a really tough line. And if state equipment gets vandalised, then it should be replaced. And lastly, I'd just like to say, there are a lot of people here tonight, but where the real power is locally is at the North Area Committee meeting, where councils have set this area as a local priority, and they'll have the opportunity to hold the police to account and at a meeting in this room on the 21st of June. I think if people came there and said some of those things, I think that would be particularly effective. And I am slightly concerned that a meeting like this, single issue meeting, is used to distract people from where the real power lies. So I'd say come to the meetings where the real power lies, where councillors are taking decisions, setting local police priorities, and where even the Police and Crime Commissioner and other people are really exercising power, whereas tonight it's just a lobbying exercise, which I'm concerned is a distraction from power.
I have to disagree with you there. I think the residents are the power here tonight. They're the ones that are coming to us and telling us what they want and they're not happy about. So I think we've got it wrong there.
Can I catch up on question like
yes,
this? So, you might want to jot this down, Richard. I'm going to agree with you on that one thing. We need to look very closely at that. I will look at it. I know you want a commitment tonight. I will look at the map. Various other things. We've got GDPR just come in. We've got the protection issues behind that. I'm sure you thought of all of that. The other thing is we mustn't detract from the fact that if there's just one person in Chesterton that misunderstands what that map's about and doesn't report, that there could be, and that's the world that I live in of liability. So definitely a commitment for me to look at it. I do accept what Mr Taylor's saying. In terms of the North Area Committee, you know what? They've already said it as a priority. We were already looking at those things. What changes tonight is that we're coming and talking to you. We've got a kind of a bigger space, a bigger time to talk about it, which is really, really helpful. In terms of the CCTV.
Yes, CCTV camera was vandalised and we did have to take it down. It didn't change our policy. We are looking for a suitable location to put up a CCTV camera again, and we did have some technical issues around our relocatable cameras which we've now solved, and that will be one of the issues on our action plan ongoing.
Do you have a timeline on that? I just wanted to say something about the spreadsheet because I'm not too sure whether that's for giving information or just updating.
It was both, that's the point.
Okay, my only concern with that is that sometimes we want to go back to people and get a bit more information, and we always ensure that people's details can remain confidential if they want to be a witness or they want to report something. So my concern would be we wouldn't have that information to go back and ask that person more about it and find out a bit more about what was going on and how it's impacting on them. Because from our point of view, if we're putting civil action together, it's very important to be able to show the impact it's having on individuals or a community. We're not dealing with the criminal activity, we're dealing with how it's impacting on the community and individuals. So we'd want to be able to nail down that information.
Okay, I've got a lady there, I've got the gentleman there, and then the gentleman with the blue shirt, and then, is it Owen in the back? And there's the 4 people there, okay.
Thank you for giving me a second bite at the cherry. I'm not sure who to address this question to, so I'll address it to all of you. I live very close to that, to the level crossing, and one of the problems that happens there is people are stopped there and use that as an opportunity to empty their car of all its rubbish directly onto the street, including glass and all sorts of stuff. What can we do about that, and how?
We certainly have a team at the City Council that deals with fly tipping or littering. They have been down in the area in the past, I know, and they've done quite a lot of work about the fly tipping. And what I'll do is tonight I'll take it back to them again, and it'll be another issue that we will promise you that we will have a look at and see can we take some actions around. And they do try to identify the fly tippers and take action against them, but they'll certainly be down to clean it up anyway. That's if it's in Cambridge City Council side of things. We will have to take it up with South Cambs if it's over the border.
Okay, the gentleman with the blue shirt, yes? Yeah?
Yeah, I would just like to comment to Mr. Taylor about the lack of due process in this public spreadsheet where information is spread in a way. I guess in response to what can we do as residents, I find it particularly reassuring that now that I have information about certain vehicles that are known to drive dangerously, now I know when I see those vehicles, I get out of the way. That's one way I keep myself safe. And this sort of information sharing happens through people to people, but when people don't meet together like this is one way how I feel that we as residents can share that information and keep ourselves safe. I totally understand the concerns about that. I don't know how to solve it. I just don't want to be involved in a nasty accident. With regards to the reporting, I have seen the spreadsheet. People on the spreadsheet are encouraged to identify a police report number or any additional information on it. So if there were people who were happy to report to the spreadsheet as well as to the police or to council, those are references in there that people are encouraged to put in. And additionally, with regards to supplying specific information from this public spreadsheet, we are aware of up to 10 registration numbers that we hope will be looked into, and we hope that we're helping you provide the information you need to act on.
Okay, thank you. So, there's the gentleman at the back, yes?
Thank you. Yeah, I think my first concern is around communication. We've heard a lot of stories today about people trying to contact you and cannot get in touch, and every time they give you information, it just goes into a black hole, nothing seems to happen, and you are quite defensive about the attitude that the police just don't care. But what you need to realise is that if you never respond, and it's impossible to contact you in any meaningful way, and every bit of information is passed to you, there's no evidence of any action, and nothing changes. To remember the public, and to me actually, that is completely indistinguishable from the police can be bothered. And I think you need to appreciate that that's how people see it. I mean, my stories are, I've given up trying to contact you recently, but when I first tried, I emailed an email address that was on your public website, which apparently went into a black hole and nobody ever looked at. The second time I tried to contact you, I actually reported the car that you was parked outside the pub for a long period of time. You could have sorted it down and probably taken a dangerous vehicle off the road. But as part of that one-on-one conversation, I said, you can do anything about this, and are you going to send somebody down to do something about this? No, we'll block it as intelligence. Okay. Well, can I speak to somebody? I want to speak to somebody in my local policing team. Can you get somebody to get in touch with me? So he said, okay. So I give him all my details. They got all my details, and just nothing happens. And that kind of attitude, that's what drives. I share some of Richard's concerns about having this public reporting. One thing it does do is it means that there's a public record of what has been reported. And then people can look back at it and say, look, you can't claim you didn't know about that. I don't want to talk about the particular smash, but you can't claim you didn't know about things because we've documented it. And if people want to know more information, you can always go on to the group and say, could the person that please ring so-and-so and give some proper contact details, and I'm sure you can have a conversation. But, so communication is a big issue. But I think the main thing I wanted to talk about is understand just to make sure that police really did understand what is going on Fen Road with regards to road safety, because there's a lot of issues being talked about, there's a lot of issues around antisocial behaviour, and my main concern is road safety, because I firmly believe that if you cannot seriously change the behaviour of some drivers on Fen Road, you will be investigating fatality. There is absolutely no doubt. Statistically, you've had the serious incident the other week, but there has been numerous vehicles that have gone off the road, and it's pure luck that there has not been a pedestrian or a cyclist between that vehicle where it left the road and where it hit a car, or where it hit a wall, or where it hit the old Enfield pub. This is an accident waiting to happen. It is definitely going to happen if you don't stop the driving. You talk about dangerous driving. I looked up dangerous driving, as I'm sure you know, for everybody else's benefit, is where the standard drives. The way in which a driver drives falls far below what would be expected of a competent and careful driver, and it would be obvious to a competent and careful driver that driving in that way would be dangerous. Now that threshold is quite high at one level, but the kind of driving that happens on the Fen Road, what I think you need to appreciate is so far beyond that threshold. It's surprising. I have a grandson who I can see quite a lot of the road every time I'm at home. We're talking cars that will just accelerate as fast as they can. They clearly must be sick. Well, I know it's hard to tell, but it's way above the speed. You see cars racing side by side around the corner. If you're racing side by side around the corner, any kind of video or photograph of that is clearly demonstrating dangerous driving. And I think it's just to try and get the message. Somebody will die, and the response so far is been going on for a very long time. Reports from the approaches. I've heard very little this evening about what we're actually going to do to stop this. I'm sure there are lots of ideas can be taken away, but you just need to realise somebody will die, and actually I would hold the police almost as responsible as I hold the perpetrator if that happens, because the response has been pathetic. If there is a serious accident like this, the highest probability is it's going to be somebody in one of those vehicles that gets killed.
Okay, if I could just thank you. That's the way in which you put that. You put that in a way which is, I think, probably helped us both to understand a little bit more. I think what we need to do is try and tailor a response that's going to help with what you're talking about in terms of that contact. We receive such a vast number of concerns and calls and incidents every day. It in no way reflects on our society. It in no way reflects about criminality. They can range from literally from one extreme to the other. We cannot, in every case, physically return each call and explain what wasn't happened and why. We will absolutely try at the point of call. I have spoken to people on the phone, and my parting words to them on the phone is, "I'm really sorry that we can't investigate this any further. There's nothing else I can do. We've been through all these processes." Put the phone down and genuinely believe that I've done an absolutely cracking job in explaining to that person what's going to happen. We survey people. The survey comes back, and the survey result will say the officer never kept me up to date with what's going on. So it's really hard to get it right for everybody. I think what we need to do is geographically define Chesterton and this problem, and then add some kind of, in a time frame, some sort of enhanced callback where we are making sure that each of those calls are called back, and someone who knows the area will give some kind of update. That in itself is a gargantuan task, because we have a lot of calls, and it's not it's not a one-size-fits-all service. We do look at things in terms of people's vulnerability and the harm that they're exposed to, but I think we need to go beyond that. So I will look at how we can do that. I think that the principle of the map, understanding we've got to look at the technicality of it. The principle of the map, and as the gentleman there says back of it, it will help people feel safer. So I acknowledge what you're saying about the contact, and I think there is something we can do about that in a time frame. We can't commit to it forever, but I think we can commit to something. There will be some individual things that we can look at where things perhaps haven't been done properly, but most of what I'm hearing you specifically say are just the way our processes are set out, that if you call to a certain type of thing, you won't get any feedback because we log it as information and we don't set about another action to report. I'm hearing what you're saying, and I absolutely acknowledge what you're saying about how scary this driving is. You're asking what we're actually going to do. We're already doing some of it. We're already going out. We instigated the patrol some time ago. The patrols were happening before this incident happened. We have different teams that we used to because we've just been through a large restructure, but before the local policing review, we had patrol time that was being dedicated to this problem. People out with speed gun, we were there using the road policing unit, using the BTP dedicated unit with their camera van, using plain clothes, using all sorts of different tactics. I need there just to be a general understanding that we have been doing things. We have, and some of that has resulted in prosecution, some of it has resulted in just in that time period, things calming down just while we're there. I acknowledge everything you're saying, and I'm not admonishing responsibility, but I need us to agree as a group that we have to do this together. We have to look at design, we have to look at cohesion between the two different communities that we've got. We've got to look at how we report, we've got to look at confidence, because I cannot honestly sit here and commit and say, you know what, it is a police problem and I'll deal with it, because that's not truthful, that's not the answer. The answer is this is a whole-scale community problem that goes right down to the planning, traffic management of your entire neighbourhood. I can commit police resources, I can do that, that's fairly simple. I'm fairly confident, 20 odd years that I've had in policing dealing with local traffic issues, that it won't make a long-term difference. So I just need that acknowledgement that we're going to have to do something together. And I think part of what we need to do, as well as the kind of communication that you're talking about, that kind of very quick feedback to give people reassurances, perhaps some sharing of a public action plan, so as we move along, people can see what's been going on. And whilst I appreciate some of that's done at the area committees, I think we need something on a bit more granular detail. And you know, just again to help you understand where we are. We have personal contact with, you know, we've only just started working together, and again, Ian and I have spoken on email. Linda and I speak all the time. We are already working together on this, so I'm not saying that we aren't already working together, but we just need to think again about how, because you're clearly saying to me this hasn't worked in 20 years, and partnership working is not a new thing, and all the partners have been working together. It's just that we need to take another look again. I have some ideas about how we can do that, but we need to get around the table and agree them.
Yeah, lovely. I've got this lady here, I've got this lady there, and then I've got that gentleman and the lady there. So that's 4 people at the moment.
Okay, mine's just a very quick question. If it happens to me, I can easily report it. If I hear of something happening to somebody else who is not reporting it, is there a way that I can report it on their behalf? I'm thinking in particular at the moment of our window cleaner who ended up getting attacked as he walked down with his ladder, and would, judging by the standard of his writing, would actually find it very difficult to make a report.
You can report something third party. It's not of as much evidential value to us, but I don't think that's what you're asking. I think if you've got someone that would have difficulty articulating themselves, then we can take evidence from them in a different way if they couldn't give us a written statement. And in fact, we would normally write the statement for them, we'd ask them questions and write it down. So 2 different questions there. You can report third party. It's not quite as simple and as much value to us. But it is possible. And if you have someone who's vulnerable and doesn't have the ability to report, then you can do that a different way as well.
I was going to make a quick point about the list. You know, I lived in Evergreens for almost 2 decades, and we had huge problems with, you know, people coming onto the school when it was the infant school. And we were talking about not wanting this to be sensationalised by the Cambridge News and have the sort of headlines. Well, I mean, I've just looked up the list, which is not in a closed Facebook group, you know, it's on Ian's website, it's got people's...
It's not on my website.
Sorry, it's on the Cambridge Live Down's website. All I'm saying is it's got, excuse me, it's got, I've just got it off there on my phone. It's got everything from, you know, descriptions of that to numbers and number plates and things like that. I think that there are issues if you're going to, and I understand how everybody wants to do it. You know, I've been there myself for a long time. If you're going to do things like that, it has to be managed in a very careful way. It can't just be put up whereby I can just bring it up and bring up all the descriptions, as can the press, and then write their stories. So things like this
Why not?
have their pros and have their cons.
Excuse me, you're saying it can't be. Can you explain why not, please?
Because what you were talking about before was getting the Cambridge News, he was here, but I think he's just gone, not to sensationalise this.
So
if
you
you bring up,
don't want this collected because you don't want the crimes reported in a particular way?
No.
These lists have use to residents, that's been explained very
yeah,
clearly.
and I think that's clear, but I think they have to be managed so that they are not openly available to somebody like Raymond Brown. Sorry, so that Raymond Brown can't click on them and write the type of headlines that actually other people here haven't liked, which are without context. So if you're going to have something like that, you do need to be careful of the data, and you do need to be careful how you present it. So it's not presented just ad hoc, and anybody can pick it up and write anything they want, because that's not helpful.
Okay, so I've got, yeah, and then I've got the lady down here.
Okay, I think there's been a lot of good talk tonight, okay, but good talk about incremental stuff and programmes and all of this. And I think and I hope you, sir, have come away from this meeting with an impression of critical mass building, of an escalation. While many of us here speak of decades, this is a crisis. It really is a crisis. Now, so this incremental stuff is good, and it has to be done, and the community stuff is good. But what can you do now? It's put about, and I think quite reliably, that there's only about half a dozen core people involved in this crime wave. So, talking as an ex-military fellow, and not that ex, who's worked with the police a lot, have you got the ability, and I understand that you have, because I've been checking, to actually do some covert operations and some snatches and some immediate arrests?
Just sorry, clarify what a snatch is for people who aren't military in the room. Just explain what a snatch is.
Can you do some covert observations, some evidence gathering?
I thought you were talking about driving past in a van and
leading to an arrest that actually works and sends a message. On the one hand, that's proactive operations, and on the other, a bit of an overt saturation, again sends a message. And on the other side, get back urgently on the liaison with people that can really help on either side.
just define to me, just so I understand and answer your question correctly, what do you mean by covert work?
Observation. You said only a couple of minutes ago that you had some plain clothes around, but quite frankly, to actually be able to see what's going on there.
Sit there and look.
In your covert van, do what you like, and we all know how to go about it, surely. I mean, are you being deliberately obtuse, or do I need to draw a diagram?
No, because to one person, covert means following and using covert surveillance and stuff like that, which obviously wouldn't be proportionate for dealing with a road traffic offence.
Road traffic offence, what are you saying? You've got people being assaulted here as well, knocked out. I'm one of them.
You talk about the vehicles. Okay,
I'm talking about the whole.
I'm not trying to be obtuse. I'm trying to answer your question truthfully and openly. We do use, when I say covert tactics, we will use a plane car from time to time with officers that are not in plain clothes, but they're in darker uniform.
All right, we're getting back into how you go about it. I'm
Yeah.
saying, will you?
But you're asking if I
will you, or do you need to go higher up? Say we can actually put in to respond to this urgent situation some urgent operational ability.
I'm going to repeat what I said earlier on, which we've already been doing that stuff. We're doing it now, and we'll be doing it,
When was the last time you done it?
We're not feeling it.
When was the last time you done it?
This week, I mean, I can publish that, but it might be counterproductive to do that. But recently, this week.
Okay, I've got the lady here.
Oh, I just going to go back a bit. People are saying that they've been reporting things and they're not getting any feedback. It's a few months ago now, I was on my bike cycling one direction and a van was coming towards me and I got spat at. It took me by surprise, I didn't see the person, all I saw was it was quite bad, I couldn't get the number. I had a moan via email to Ian Manning and a few other residents and he said you must report it. So I did, I think I went online and reported it. And I got a phone back from somebody saying, you know, how do you feel after the incident? All that. Very positive. I couldn't give them any information, but so I was surprised he did ring back. So you do sometimes get responses from his words reported, you do get a response. But it isn't all just driving. I mean, we know you saw somebody pushed off their bike. A friend of ours got chips thrown in her face. Doesn't sound very serious, but it really did. You know, like an assault. So it's just those things as well.
So it's just, Jerry earlier said she felt that we had power, which is very nice to feel. But I think, actually, looking and listening to all this, I'm a resident of only 5 years, but I did look on websites and found minutes of meetings from 2011, 2012, and apart from the fact we have actually now got the station, nothing is any different. But I feel that we've been asking how we can help and so on and so forth, and this goes on and on and on, that you can get a crime number, you can get an incident number, we continue reporting things, you collect endless amounts of data. I think we all appreciate that it's now become a high priority policing area, but I think actually, I feel that we are powerless almost, and I think almost the police feel. And the councillors and everybody, I mean, we're all, you know, I'm not making any particular point other than that it's all going on and it doesn't seem to be bearing any fruit, and I think we need to think outside the box and look at something much bigger.
Can I just remind you that years ago we used to have the police meetings run by a lady called Lil Speed. A lot of you will remember Lil Speed.
Yeah, I know the name.
Yeah, and those police meetings, and we had the anti-social behaviour team there and everybody, and there was a lot of crime at the time when we started the meetings. And as they went on, the crime did begin to disappear. That's right, it went right down. So the meetings were stopped because nobody wanted to carry on. So here we are again, another decade, doing exactly the same thing. So we can be positive, get this group going, and
this
have
is the
the
beginning
meeting.
of a bigger.
That's right, yes.
groundswell.
So I don't know how often you're going to want to hold the meetings, but that's a thing to decide, and then we'll go from there.
I think meetings are useful because it's about communication.
That's right.
But we can't just go on having meetings after meetings
No.
after meetings and then no action.
That's right. And also, I would like myself would be to have my PCSOs back how they used to be a couple of years back. We
Yeah.
used to see them around the street. The kids knew them,
Yeah.
and it was fantastic. But we don't have that communication now, do we? When we're out on the street. I've had a white van come after me when I've been on the pavement. I don't know if he's trying to race me or what. But, you know, it happens, it's happened to us all, I think, at some point or other. Okay, lady here, she has spoken.
I just wanted to say really on my husband who's been working a lot with the Network Rail. We live the other side of the railway line and we're very aware of the amount of frustration that it's, I mean, I suppose what I'm having this sort of everything going on this evening, you know, the heat has gone up in the area. And one of the big factors is the new station. And, you know, the amount of time we have to wait for the railway, you know, the gates to button down, it's very frustrating. Now, you know, we're retired and we're not in a rush, so it's, but for people who've got to get places, who are ill, whatever it is. Anyway, the good news is that he has had a serious meeting with somebody called Anna Bradman.
Anna Bradman.
Oh, okay. To do with the signalling.
Yes.
And I just want to put into the meeting that there is some positive response to that, that actually they are going to try and moderate the gates so that people sometimes are waiting 20 minutes. Now that isn't healthy because people then just burst out. That's why the gate got crushed, because people tried to get through it and they didn't want to wait 20 minutes. And, you know, so that's just a bit of good news, I think. Just put it in. He can't be here at the meeting.
And one thing that's worth noting...
Sorry, Owen, I'm sorry, I forgot.
No, that's fine. But one thing that's worth noting is that Network Rail are, you know, even if possibly part of the cause of some of the problem, they are also a victim. The barrier bash, I think the day after the pilot on Ben Road, cost them about £75,000. So they have a bit of a financial interest in helping fix this as well. So if there are things that need a bit of an extra financial push, it's maybe not beyond the realms of possibility the Network Rail might be.
Thank you. And Network Rail are going to be at the North Area Committee on the 21st of June, which is being held here. Come along and air your views at them as well, which would be great. Is there anybody who hasn't spoken yet that really wants to? The lady there and the gentleman there.
Right, so my name's Rachel. Just to say that we've had really good support at Chesterton Methodist Church from the police. We've had loads of problems with antisocial behaviour, with vandalism, people climbing on the roof, really intimidating behaviour. We've been really fully supported by the police and things are happening, so thank you for that. And just a kind of remark, you know, we're talking a lot about band-aids and things and fixing the problems, but are there more preventative things that we should be doing? Ian Manning mentions a buddying system and working with the community. The article from the resident in the Traveller Estate who said actually these are our youth who we used to be able to have some impact on. Clearly there's some failure of relationships and community going on. What more can we be doing in that way to actually not ostracise but actually have a sense of ownership? They are part of our community and we should be working with them. What else can we do in that way? Because I think that would be really important alongside all of this.
A couple of questions for the inspector. Pardon? A couple of questions for the inspector. When our chap came in and said, I've got all this video footage, I've reported it from day one and several times since, I would hope he would be a bit more concerned to find out why it's not been taken up and just say it's probably someone on leave. I think you should be making a commitment to the people who've been hurt and affected by this crash, unfortunately, to explain why that was someone on leave, or did it really go into a black hole that's only just been raised with you now?
I totally agree with you. I apologise if it doesn't come across that way. Predominantly I was trying to step in actually because I don't want that gentleman to in any way inadvertently damage that investigation by disclosing something. I'm sorry if it came across any other way, absolutely. You know, I joined for one reason, and that's to help victims of crime, so yes, absolutely. I'm trying to give you explanations and help you understand how we work. Answers and understanding are the way in which I'm going to build confidence with you. I'm trying to be truthful about things. He could have been on leave, he could just be overwhelmed with work, I don't know. I will find out whether that gentleman there is gone. Is he still here? No, he's gone. Whether the victim of that crime wants that to be made public or not, I don't know. I'm certainly happy to commit to raising that as a complaint and deal with it that way. I think it's fair that now that we know in a public forum that's happened. Again, and perhaps to be fair to the gentleman, I closed down on him so quickly because of my concern for what he potentially might have said about the footage that he had, that I misunderstood completely what he was saying. But still, I think we just need to give people around us the benefit of the doubt. No one is trying to deliberately sabotage. The idea that we are deliberately not trying to do things or not bothered or being lazy or siding. I will follow it up, but I'm just trying to justify the way in which I'm trying to explain things to you, because there's no... I'm not trying to hide or deceive anybody, I'm just trying to be honest.
Okay, is there any more
And my
questions?
other
Sorry.
point was, I think there are only, as this spreadsheet which I've just heard about discusses, and from my own experience, there's only half a dozen or 10 vehicles that drive at racing pace down Fen Road. I've seen in the past a couple of times cars pulled over by what I assume were unmarked police cars. I saw a week ago, or in the last few days, police in fluoro gear with speed cameras. I think that's nice to have. It might make people think something's happening, but no one's going to speed past these fluoro jobs with speed cameras. But a few unmarked police cars occasionally to catch the people that go past at 70 miles an hour and do something and prosecute them. There's only half a dozen or 10 people doing it who would make a real impact.
Okay, there are some things that some people may have worked this out already. There's some things that I'm keen not to share with you about tactics and about plainclothes specifically, and I'm going to stick to that. Read into that what you will. I agree with you on the point about high visibility jackets. Yeah, it's effective. It adds to a point whilst they're there. It's reassuring, but it's not the answer.
Okay, well, we've got about 7 minutes left. So is there anybody?
Well, I suppose we've gone on.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here?
Yeah.
Just a quick thank you for turning up. It can't have been easy for you. And thank you for all your input, etc. Just so we get a general feel of everything, can I have a quick show of hands? Are you, as a group, happy with the police response for tonight? If you just raise your hands if you're happy with what you've heard.
Tonight.
Yeah, tonight. Yeah?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's probably more than half of you are happy with your response. Thank you, so well done. And then what we've got to do now is take it a lot further, haven't we? And really get some action going. Now, how that happens, again, I don't know if we have time to sort it all out, but certainly we could have a dialogue and chat at some point, and then with Jerry and Ian and other people, get a group together run by the residents, not using the politicians. Obviously, you're going to use the politicians to gather information, put the information out. But the next meeting will run totally by residents. And obviously, I'm quite happy to lead this, but if anyone wants to help or do anything, I'd be really grateful for your assistance. And so if anyone who does, contact details. If anyone who does want to, I don't know if you'll want to leave your email addresses with you. I know Jerry got some from last time. But if people just actually want to come and talk to you and say, yes, I want to be active in helping, maybe you could do that and we could get together. As I say, if I can talk to you.
Could I just add one suggestion to that? If there is someone, and I won't be looking for people to commit tonight, who's willing to sign up as a police support volunteer, PSV, there, with that responsibility comes a more open access to police data. You will obviously have to sign into a confidentiality agreement. You'll have to understand the rules in which I operate a bit. There is no better way for you to be more confident than what I'm doing to literally plant someone in my office. You have a swipe card, you can come and see me. We will share with you what we are doing. There is nothing to hide. If someone wants to take the responsibility, it can even be a private affair that we don't publicise who it is. I've done it before. It's an excellent way for you to have someone you can sound off and ask, can you go and find out why this is happening? Can you go and see what happened? Obviously, there's certain rules within that. Quite honestly as well, if that member of the public, if one of you guys is walking in and out of the team's office, they're going to understand a lot better firsthand what's going on. I've used that tactic before in other areas. It does work. I'm quite happy to do that.
That's interesting. So any volunteers? Put yourself to Paul.
Come and chat.
Can I just quickly say something as well? I think I gave you the wrong email address for our section. It's ASB section at cambridge.gov.uk. So,
or no dots.
ASB section at cambridge.gov.uk.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming, and thank you to the police, the social behaviour team, thanks, girls. And we look forward to having more meetings like this.
How will we know when and where the next meeting is?
We'll get together. Obviously, we want you to be at the next meeting, so we'll organise something. We'll put posters out with the door building.
Word of mouth leaflets.
And then obviously there is that very. I know everybody's not on Facebook, but there is that very useful Chesterton chat group. So if you are on Facebook, find out someone is Chesterton chat, join it, and it will give you all the information. As I say, if anyone wants to come in, give me email addresses, phone numbers, etc., and volunteer for help. Please rush.